Hi, my name is Jake Bossenkemper, Director of Agronomy and Research here at Liqui-Grow.
And I'm Phil Long, Regional Agronomist here with Liqui-Grow.
Phil, we just got done talking about how much fun graduate school was, and we were just talking about, how we're applying all that great knowledge to what we do for a living today, and it's fantastic. It really is. All right, so this is the beginning of a four-part series where we're going to talk about the lead up to fungicide application season. And so we're going to cover various topics in short, 5 or so minute videos that you need to be thinking about as we go into the fungicide season. The last video is going to be the current update on conditions and weather, which is, I would argue the most important thing you need to know when you're going into, the time to make the fungicide application itself. But we're going to start with modes of action, right, Phil?
Yeah.
And why are we going to do that?
And honestly, this way we can break it up so it's not so overwhelming. We can focus on what's most important right there at the end. But yeah, we're going to talk about modes of action. The primary ones we use are 3 different modes of action. The group 3s, group 7s, and group 11s, essentially. So most people know those are group 11s as the strobilurins. The group 7s is kind of the newer, added in newer, more recently. The SDHIs, and then the group 3s, the DMI or the triazoles. It seems like we have lots of names for them, but anyway, those are the primary 3 that we typically have in any given fungicide, or one at a time. So we're going to talk a little bit about
the importance of that, and why that's important. But wait a second, Phil. Didn't we hear last year that cheap generic strobilurins were the most economic and generally speaking, and increased yields all over the place? Didn't we hear that?
Yeah, I heard that quite a bit last year.
Well, why was that maybe a one-time wonder?
Yeah, well, the primary cause of that was probably that we had southern rust as the main disease that we're really trying to battle. And southern rust is not, I shouldn't say that right now, but it's not a typical, we don't see it every year.
Yeah,
so it's not one that we're battling with the same fungicides every year. It comes up from the south, and it's just not one we have to fight every year. And so some of those older and single mode of action products
happen to be pretty good on southern rust.
We're pretty good at it.
Yeah, and that was the main disease we had. So it's no wonder that a generic strobilurin did fairly well last year, right? And just to make sure it's clear as day, southern rust, just because it was bad last year and a little bit bad the year before, doesn't mean it's going to be bad this year, because that has to be transported from the south to the north. It doesn't overwinter here. So I would say, even though we had southern rust really bad last year and to some extent the year before, that doesn't mean at all that it's going to be bad this year. So the observation that a cheap generic fungicide did well last year is not a predictor of what we might expect this year.
And I would add real quick too on that, is how we get southern rust. One thing to keep in mind, it's brought up on weather, a weather front of some kind pushing from the south, the Gulf. Sometimes people say it comes from a hurricane. Usually it's more the southwest, a strong front that pushes up there. So, keep that in mind. We have to have all those conditions, and obviously economics plays into this too, like we're going to talk about today. But, last year they said a lot of farmers down south did not spray fungicide, so there's more spores in the air, more things getting transported and all those things. So it was a pretty good recipe, but it does not mean, a lot of the stars have to align to have that happen again.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're basically saying that a single site of action fungicide is probably in general not going to be the best economic return.
Yeah.
And we're kind of science guys, so let's look at a university publication that's on the Crop Protection Network website that we're going to have a link into this video. That was a multi-state, multi-location study looking at all kinds of different fungicides: single site of action fungicides, 2 site of action fungicides, and 3 site of action fungicides. And that, I think it was done in 2018 and 2019, I think, but that's why the link is in there, so you can look up all the specific details for yourself. And what they found is that 2 site of action fungicides and 3 site of action fungicides not only increase corn yield more than single site of action fungicides, but also that economically there was a larger payback for the dual and triple site of action fungicide. And think about it. One of the problems we have when we make a fungicide application is we don't necessarily know what diseases we're going to have. We might see gray leaf spot out there, but that doesn't mean later we're not going to get northern corn leaf blight or tar spot, for example. So the way I look at it, it's like a broad spectrum herbicide. You're covering more of the potential problems that you may encounter. In my opinion, having a dual or triple site of action fungicide is going to cover a larger spectrum of potential diseases, right? When we apply a fungicide at VT, there may be no disease or there might be gray leaf spot, but you don't know if you're going to get northern corn leaf blight or tar spot. You just don't know. And when you're using a multiple site of action fungicide, you're going to have a wider spectrum of diseases you're going to cover. And so that's why, you know, you got to play to the averages. You got to think about, you know, years and multi-location data. And that's, you know, as a scientist, that's what I always think about. You can't just take one observation from 1 year and think that that's going to be what you're going to see going forward all the time. That was kind of a tangent, Philip.
No, it was a good tangent, you know, and I think each one of those modes of action groups have different, you know, residual activity and even localized systemic activity in the plant. The DMI, the group 3s are probably more mobile in the plant than the other two, but we get coverage-wise, that's part of this conversation. We get to ask this question a lot, you know, should I put a cheap generic up front or the better one, you know, up front if I'm going to use two? And that goes exactly to what you were just saying, because if you don't know, you know, we can go out there and see if we got northern starting or gray leaf spot starting around that tassel time frame. But if you don't know, these products, especially with group 7s in them, have longer residual activity. And if you put a generic out there, an older, mode of action out there that's been around a long time and may not have much residual activity, then you likely will have to spray again, which is, if you put the better product up front, there's a chance that it may hold you until that R4
Yeah, and you might not
frame,
have to use the other product. Exactly right.
You might not need that.
Okay, so quickly to review, what we've said so far is that the dual or triple mode of site of action fungicide, according to that multi-state, multi-location university publication, is going to be the most profitable. Okay, so that's, you know, an important point. The second point that we wanted to talk about, Phil, was fungi evolving resistance to these different fungicides, these different site of action fungicides. And what did we talk about right before the video, kind of in the background, about soybeans?
Yeah, you know, it's pretty well known that things like frog eye and brown spot and stuff have resistance to the strobilurins. We've known that for a long time, and that's why they always say if you see that particular disease coming, you can't just blindly spray any fungicide. You need to pay attention to what's in there and make sure you're likely hitting it with multiple modes of action so that you can take care of it. Because a lot of these, any fungus in general, produces millions of spores. So people always talk about herbicide resistance in weeds. Well, they might produce 5 or 10 or maybe 500,000 seeds on a pigweed, but spores are in the millions. So it's pretty easy to gain resistance if there's already started resistance to a particular group.
Yeah, and that's the other important second point, is that, you know, we want to save these fungicide site of actions, and using a fungicide with multiple sites of action is going to help delay resistance development. We've already seen that in soybean with frog eye leaf spot and brown spot, as you said. We looked it up a little bit. To the best of our knowledge, northern corn leaf blight, gray leaf spot is not currently, there's no populations that are resistant to fungicides that we know of, but we've seen it happen with corn rootworm, we've seen it happen with weeds.
It's likely in pockets here or there, and we don't maybe fully know.
That's the second reason why we want to consider using a multiple site of action fungicide.
Yeah, that's exactly
Have we gabbed long enough?
Yeah, and I think the other point we can make is that crop protection site that you mentioned, they also have a really good table on fungicide efficacy. So it lists all the different fungicides, and it's very easy. It's color-coded. I like color-coded things, but it's very easy to see what they're good or not good at, you know, particular diseases. So that's an important one to check out.
Check that link out too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Lead Academy.
Liqui-Grow
Excellence
in agronomy
development.